This is the brief Alliance War tier list for each class, starting with Mutant. I'm going to go for the top 10 Mutant War attackers, in my opinion, taking into account what they take to be good and function, and generally targeting tiers 1 through 3. So the 10th for me is Sunspot because he has a controlled playstyle, is very sustainable, he has the perfect block, has high damage, and he's Incinerate immune. And by controlled playstyle, I just mean it's not relying on RNG, it's kind of not that reliant on AI even, it's mostly just throwing a couple special ones, throwing a special 2 when the fight's over. In the 9th spot, for me is Colossus. It says very tanky and high damage, and those are very important. Note that for high damage, he generally needs power backs. It's mostly for his immunities. Your ability to be immune to Incinerate, Bleed, and Armor Break all together in one is very, very powerful. 8th is Stryfe. He just hits really freaking hard. He can block unblockables and doesn't take damage back on his medium, heavy, and some of his special 1 and special 2 hits. But it's mostly just the fact that he hits so hard that he can generally just ignore node abilities and all that stuff. In 7th is Professor X, and he has a controlled playstyle, which is a theme we're going to see a lot through a lot of these attackers, but it's mostly this note here. Very potent, controllable damage cycle. You just throw special 3s and continue to throw special 3s, and it's that easy. He does have anti-evade and miss, that's a little typo there, and he does basically for his damage cycle throw heavies and specials, which has its uses in certain different matchups, and obviously the damage, which goes along with all the other stuff. In 6th spot you have Magneto. He versus metals just basically shuts the entire fight down, especially with the Pacify Mastery, and he's very tanky, especially in those matchups. He hits hard, and controlled playstyle again. He isn't even really that RNG based, because realistically, if you're playing him right, it doesn't matter if you get 15 bleeds or 30, it's not that big of a deal. Against metals, he's anti-miss and auto-block. Against metals, he's kind of pseudo anti-evade just because of the length of his parry, and he is 90% bleed and shock resistant. In 5th spot, we have Omega Red, and at the start of the fight, he's easily one of the most potent, just out-of-the-gate attackers in terms of his speed, and that needs suicides. Again, he has no damage back on mediums and heavies, and he is poison immune and bleed resistant. The main thing is this: high damage in terms of a damage to hit/opponent power ratio, and also the fact that you can just barely heavy and not really touch the opponent much and still put out a lot of damage, and that in and of itself and that uniqueness is what makes him very powerful. In the 4th spot we have Archangel. It's very simple. He's a very simple champion. There's not that many bullet points, but they're just all very helpful. Very, very potent damage. Those neurotoxins, especially when horsemen are crazy. Reliable, universal AAR. There's not many champions that can reduce both offensive and defensive ability accuracies, and he can do that at 3 neurotoxins at SIG 112 or higher, and at 4 at SIG 1, he can just completely shut down abilities. And then, again, and this is a little bit of a lesser ability, but it's still helpful, is his high damage/utility to hit power rate. Sometimes you have to throw a couple specials, or combo, or do all these things to set up your utility or your damage. For Archangel, it's just parry heavy 2-3 times, and you're pretty much good to go. So that in and of itself is a pretty helpful and reliable thing in Alliance War. 3rd for me is actually White Magneto, and some people might not agree that Magneto is better than Archangel, but he's just so potent. Versus metals, he's actually pretty good at 70% reduced ability accuracy reduction, and he is bleed immune, but the real reason he's on here is the pre-fight. Any champion that is attacking a defender with that pre-fight has a 15% attack increase, which is very helpful. But here's the main thing. If you're a hero or a metal champion, you get a passive stun on parry, and that helps prevent the anti-stun shrug for parry specifically, and limber. Absolutely insane ability, and has legitimately just straight up changed the game. 2nd is Apocalypse. Very high damage, but he needs to be ramped up to have that high damage. Powerful damage cycle, PS1 power back. If you've watched any of my videos, you know this is true. You PS1 power back, and I've killed lots of Mystics and other really potent defenders just by getting to special 2, throwing it, and then throwing it again. Immunities, he is immune to bleed, incinerate, and evade, but his really main one is disorient. He's the only disorient immune champion I guess there are people who can pseudo become immune to like Hard Knock Life by reducing block ability accuracy. So like, I guess it'd be Proxima and Cap Samuelson. But he's the only Disorient Immune champion, and that carries on fight to fight once you get it. And then there's the fact that you can horseman people and make them fully bleed resistant, and they go unstoppable on your first hit, and they get increased ability accuracy for offensive abilities, and they get a special attack increase with prowess. And on top of that, he also makes Cable a viable attacker, and Cable is part of the synergy that allows him to auto ramp up to max on his first fight. So that's a really, really good duo there. Number 1 is Kitty Pryde. You just basically are always in a mode where you can't get hit. If you can get hit, it pauses, you don't take damage, assuming you're awakened. Yeah, pretty helpful. Easy, safe intercepts, because if you miss the intercept, they just miss you. Easy access to crits when you're in that mode. You have very, very, very high crit rate. On the opponent's specials, you can phase them, so you can phase in Dex, or Dex and phase, or phase and block, and do all these things that really, really, really heavily mitigates the damage you take from opponent's specials. Her special 2 is kind of actually a nuke if you have suicides. She is an auto block counter with Tigra, and she is Incinerate immune. So just a very brief overview of, in my opinion, the top 10 Mutant War attackers, and here they are kind of laid out from left to right, top to bottom in order. And I mean, I'm going to be releasing 5 other videos like this, so I hope you like it, and I hope this helps you in choosing who to rank and who to assign for attack.